We begin today's recording by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are on. I am on Burrawang land. Where are you, Breezer?
I am on the land of the Djajarurrung people.
We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are tuning in today.
And wherever you're listening to the potty today, make sure you know whose land you're on. Join us each week for some booze-free banter about life without booze.
If you're entertaining cutting back your booze by a day, a week, a month, or for the rest of your life, we would love for you to tune in.
Buckle up and come along for a ride that may just change your life. If any of today's conversations have been triggering, please reach out to your local support centre in Australia. That is Lifeline 131114. Crack a Meso.
Let's go, yeah. What are you drinking today, Breezer?
Well, as you know, we've been so piggy on our Altina, and the beautiful owner, co-founder of Altina, Christina, is sending us the new range. Dun, dun, dun. So we're like sitting patiently at the letterbox waiting for the plastic to arrive. Yeah. But if you don't have patience and you do want to try, you have never tried Altina, they're non-alcoholic wines. What have they given our listeners, Meso?
They have given us a discount code of 10% off when you use the discount code BFB10 at checkout, and you'll find them at
www.altinadrinks.com. We absolutely love them, and we're so grateful of the support they give us for the podcast. So thank you, Altina.
We're so lucky. We love you, Altina.
Meso!
Breezer!
I'm looking at us on screen. I'm feeling a bit bland because I guess we had on was so bright and beautiful and bubbly.
I know.
And we're just back to our, back in black t-shirts, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
Who have we just been badgering on with, Meso?
We have had Jojo Defina. Jojo is Anthony Hammond's wifey, so Noddy. We had Noddy on a few weeks ago to tell us his story about his addiction, and Jo came on to tell us her side of the story, which was incredible. Oh, just hanging off every word. I don't think the support people's stories is shared enough, I feel, Meso. Like it's correct.
It's a huge journey Jo and the boys have been on. With Anthony, isn't it?
100%. And it really highlights, she felt invisible.
Yeah.
Support people are sort of invisible, aren't they? And they don't have that support, and what they've gone through, like, it's hectic.
They suffer in silence, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
We were so grateful that Jo felt safe enough to share hers, because it's a big deal. It's a massive deal.
We're so honoured that she felt she could trust us with this, because there's so much shame that comes with addiction and support people and everything. So to bare her soul and tell her story so beautifully, and she speaks so well. Her and Noddy, Anthony Hammond, are just a dynamite couple, aren't they?
I know.
They wear their gorgeous shirts
right?
and their power. They're just a power couple.
They're a massive vibe.
They are a vibe.
Hashtag couple goals.
And we love them. We just appreciate both of their time and what they've sharing, what they've gone through, as we've said, will help so many. So, we love ya.
Let's get amongst it with Jo.
Let's do it. Welcome, Jojo Defina. A big, warm, booze-free bants with buddies. Welcome to Jojo Defina. Welcome to the podcast, Jo.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So we just had your husband, Anthony Hammond, on a couple of weeks ago, and you're coming in to say your side of the story. So we just so appreciate your time straight up. It's a pretty big deal to find out the other side of the story, and we really appreciate your time here today, Jo. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. I think, Anthony's been incredibly brave, and obviously we've been to hell and back. But I remember saying to him, as he was kind of out of Melbourne Private and going through the recovery journey, I've learned a lot about the AA speak. He said, there will be a time when you're going to be able to do so much good for other people. You don't realise it now, but you just by being you, you will be able to help so many other people. And I think he's 2 years sober now, and I think he's really seeing that. And leaning into it. I hate that term, but we've got 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we met in late 2014. I'd been single for 8 years. I'd had the big career, the big job, my own business, flying around the world, blah, 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 and really unlucky in love. And in July of that year, I was like, I've got to let go. I was 38. I've got to let go of the idea of finding a partner and having kids because it's going to consume me and it's going to make me a bitter, twisted woman.
And you wanted that, Jo? You wanted that? You wanted the...
Yeah, I did want that, but life had other plans. And so I went off on this retreat in Thailand and, it's a whole other podcast there. And came back and I was like, I've got to let go. I've got to let go of this. And that was July. And then October of 2014, a friend of mine said, you need to come to this trivia night. Rock and roll trivia. There's going to be a whole lot of different people there. You should come along. And I'm like, all right, I'll just say yes to everything. And at the same time, Anthony was in the pub over the road drinking on his own. And he bumped into a couple of friends and they're like, one of the girls, she said, my sister's not coming. We've got a spare ticket. Do you want to come? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he toddled off and I got there and the girl who'd organised it grabbed my hand and dragged me there were 2 tables, dragged me to the other table and was walking around introducing me to everyone and then got to Anthony and she's like, and this is Nottie. And she squeezed my hand so hard and then literally just pushed me down next to him. And we didn't leave each other's side for 3 days. But he was like 2 minutes out of a really long relationship and I was like, see you never.
Yeah.
So when we did eventually part ways by the Sunday, I said to him, if I don't hear from you by Tuesday, lose my number. This is not me, by the way. I'm never this bullshit and confident when it comes to love stuff. And so he texted me as he left on the Sunday and he took me out for our official first date by the Tuesday and then 6 months later we were having a baby.
Holy shit.
Oh, amazing.
Wow.
And I tell that story to a lot of women who are going, oh, it's going to happen because, and you'll find this is a theme in what I talk about today, I let go. Mm-hmm. I let go and something came to me that I had been seeking. And, until I fell pregnant, we were just like a single couple having a great time. So I never really, I'd been in advertising for 20 years. I can party harder than anyone, I can drink anyone under the table. I don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol though. I know when to stop. But I guess, the signs were probably there, but you're not looking for them.
And especially that first 6 months, I reckon, or even first months for meeting someone, you just start partying,
Totally.
And they're the most perfect person. They've got no flaws. You just
That's right.
Completely, especially partying, like you do a lot of partying, I feel.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, we were just having a great time, great time. And then when I fell pregnant, which was planned, and so I just became this pure, chaste, another woman. And I remember saying to him when I was pregnant, you have to quit. You're not allowed anywhere near me if you're smoking. And
were you a smoker, Jo?
Like, what's that?
Were you a smoker?
Oh, socially, but never.
Yeah, every now and then. Yeah.
Like I don't have an addictive personality in any way. So like I can pick something up and put it down and whatever. Interesting that we've come together. And then when I was 7 months pregnant, one of my closest friends died very unexpectedly, leaving behind 2 children. I was actually with her mum yesterday. And Anthony and I talked and it really, like it's going to hit you hard anyway, but all I could think is here's 2 babies without a parent. And I was just like, we need to change how we live. I mean, things happen, but we need to make sure we're around for our children. And it was a really, I just remember the conversations I had with him about that. And then, of course, when our son was born, it kind of hit even harder about we're parents now. We've got little people who need us to stay alive. And I know he was still, It was never, he wasn't always like at rock bottom either. Like a functioning alcoholic can hide their drinking.
Yep.
And I think you can also live in denial quite nicely and
float along.
Float along and excuse things. And so that was the first 18 months.
Was
our story.
Was he in active addiction?
No, I think the trigger for the real kind of the first trough, and I think there were two before, was when his father passed away in 2018. And that was somewhat sudden. I mean, we all still had the opportunity to say goodbye to him, but and that really hit him hard. You know, I think for a man to lose his father, and so much of his identity was tied up in, you know, the Hammond family and pubs and sport and Bendigo and, you know, this family thing. And we were moving, it's a sideboard there, but it used to be in another room, and we were moving it from one room to the other, and we used to keep all the booze in it. And I was clearing it out to make it lighter to move. And as I pulled the bottles out, most of them were empty. And I said to him, you know, where'd this go? And he said, oh, you know, when Dad died, I probably drank a bit much, and just excused it away like that. And I accepted that because I wanted to.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good old denial.
Denial, beautiful thing. And then we'd also been going through this process of trying to have another baby, and it didn't work out for us. And so we ended up doing 5 rounds of IVF, multiple miscarriages. It was really rough. And I think there's not a lot of support for men going through that. You know, the focus on the woman. I became an absolute psycho because you do.
Yeah.
And I'm a really type A personality. It's all about control. Professionally, you know, I'm taking a break at the moment, but I'm a producer. I deal with hundreds of people, millions of dollars. I have to anticipate outcomes. I have to control anything before it happens. It's all about control. And so interesting to end up in a situation where I had absolutely no control. But I tried my hardest to control even the, you know, trying to have another baby. To me, it was like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and this will be the outcome. Didn't work out like that. And, you know, I'm sure that took a real toll on Anthony as well. And we had just got to the end of our 5th round and it didn't work. And I remember sitting in the car out in the driveway when the nurse called to tell me it hadn't worked, and we're right near a school, and it was school pickup, and I was ugly crying, and I'm like, everyone can see me. And we'd booked a trip to go to Italy. And we were actually meant to take the trip the year before, but Anthony's dad had taken a turn, and so we cancelled it. And so this was the trip we were meant to take. And that's when we went to Italy to see Kate and Pete over Easter.
Well,
and so we're like, I was like, I've got to let this go. I have to let this go. I've got to let go.
Tough.
And guess what?
Oh,
I got pregnant. And he's our little 3-year-old Tuscan baby.
Oh, I love it.
Love that.
So there you go. Let go again.
Let go.
And then we got back to Australia, and towards the end of 2019, I had a whole lot of my mother has dementia, and there's been a really rough 3 years now navigating that, and some pretty traumatic family fallout from that. And so my attention was distracted there as well. And there was a pandemic and 2 little kids, and I could see really good distractions. I could see he was, you know, getting worse and worse. But now I had, you know, a newborn baby, another child, preschool aged, and an unwell mother. And so I kind of had to park him, even though I knew he wasn't 100% right.
But easier to park him, like way easier to park him.
Oh, way easy to park it. And, but I know I mentioned this to you last week. I never knew who was going to walk in the door.
Mm. Wow.
And he would go to work and I didn't know what time he'd come home. I was effectively a solo parent, I think, for quite a few years. Even though he was physically there, I knew I couldn't, responsibly leave him with the kids. And you start adjusting your behaviour without even realising you're doing it. I'll drive them.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah. And it's subtle stuff you do to kind of, control a situation that you can't really control. And sometimes I find text messages I've sent him or notes I've written myself and I'm like, wow, like it was there and I was saying stuff to him, but I just kept plodding along.
Yeah.
And then what are we? So we're 2020. I mean, life's a shitstorm. I think it was April when, all the lockdowns started. And he would go to work, even though the pub was closed, and say he was doing maintenance or whatever. And he said he'd be like resurfacing a bar or whatever because he'd come home and vomit. Mm. But he'd been drinking a bottle of scotch and, doing coke. And meanwhile, I'm at home looking after children on my own. Yeah. It was the pandemic hit both of us really hard. We're self-employed. Our businesses were closed, no income, living on JobKeeper. It was fucked. I would drop my son to kinder and I couldn't actually interact with any parents because I couldn't speak to anyone because I couldn't relate to anyone.
I was just about to ask that, Jo. Did you find it isolating when Anthony was in his active addiction, and did you find yourself covering up for him as well?
Yep. I covered up a lot, but I also just I withdrew. Like very few people really knew what was going on. Very few people knew what was going on. And I know Anthony spoke about shame and you've spoken about shame. There is a lot of shame for the partner, a lot of shame because, this was from this TED Talk I was listening to this morning, life doesn't discriminate and addiction doesn't discriminate, but you're suddenly going, oh, my God, my husband's an alcoholic and I can't talk to anyone about this because it's shameful and there's this idea that it's the guy on the park bench with a paper bag. That guy is only there because he couldn't claw his way out. And what Anthony's done is incredible. He almost lost everything. He lost me. I was done. Done. And I remember, when everything was really, really bad, thinking, how do we come back from this? Yeah. And, we have. Mm. And so what was I up to chronologically? Things were really bad. I couldn't talk to anyone. I know I tried. There were a couple of people close to me who I had no idea, but turns out they'd, overcome their own challenges and they steered me towards Al-Anon. Yeah. Didn't work for me. I really found and partly because they were probably right, everything was on Zoom. And so I did, I think 2 Al-Anon meetings. One was when I went to sleep school with our youngest. He wasn't a sleeper. First child, Angel. My best friend said to me, you got no idea what it's like to have a newborn. They don't sleep like this. Second one made up for it. Uh-huh. And I went to sleep school and I remember when you go in, they want to know all your history, and I told them, and they actually said to me, we don't want your husband visiting you while you're here. And that really slapped me over the face. I was like, wow. Like they've clearly made a judgment on who he is and they think there's this drunk guy would walk in the door, and I needed him to come and bring some stuff one day. And I said to him, "You're not allowed in. You have to basically hand over the extra clothes outside. They don't want you in here."
Oh.
And I met a woman there who is, well, sends you all kinds of people. She was just one of those angels who came out of nowhere when things were really bad later on. She drove from the other side of town. I don't even know how she knew, and turned up on the doorstep with a whole lot of food and flowers, and came in, unpacked it, and went, "Okay, see ya. Call me if you need anything."
Bless.
Oh,
What an angel.
And, she's just, one of those keepers that I was just like, thank you, universe, for plopping her in my lap. And then so towards the end of, that was towards the end of 2020. And things were really bad by then. By November, and when Anthony was talking about we were seeing a marriage counsellor, getting nowhere. And
had you, sorry to interrupt, Jo, but had you sort of called him out on his drinking? By then he'd lost his licence. He lost his licence for drink driving. Right. But he managed to kind of explain it away. And I was really pissed off because I'm like, thank you. Now I'm the only driver in the family. And guess what? We've got two kids to get around. Yeah. Fucking asshole. Thanks for that. So I was really angry about it, but also relieved because I knew that it was a lot safer him not being on the road. Yeah.
But that, that added an extra element of degree of difficulty, I think they say in gymnastics competitions. And I think, I know Anthony mentioned I bought breathalyzers, and the gaslighting's unreal, he would come home and be like, not know where he was. And there was a night where I never feared for my safety, but he actually thought he was at a pub. He didn't think he was at home. And I remember I had one baby on me and the other, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom of one of of our eldest, because I just thought, he doesn't know where he is. He's not in control of himself. He could just fall onto a child or something. And I just remember going, body blocking to protect your kids is probably not okay. None of this is not okay. And I'd got on to an addiction specialist doctor who I'd called a few times. And then I don't know how.
Support at this stage, Jo?
Pardon?
Did you have any support, like friends or family? Or
yeah, look, there were
reached out to.
Yeah, look, I a couple of people, but like I say, the shame is pretty real, and you don't want anyone to know. There were really only a couple of really close friends who knew what was going on. And I think they probably were more aware than I was of how bad it was. And without them, they were just, one of them was on the other side of the world, and she would just check in.
Yeah.
Just check in. And, those check-ins, she knows how important they were to me. Not that I've ever said, but the fact she was doing them. And then, my oldest friend in the world, who was, she was going through her own stuff at the time through COVID, and she would just drive past and bring a coffee. Let's go for a
little thing.
Little things. And, during all the lockdowns, another really good friend up in Sydney, she would call and Zoom. She's like, we're dancing. We're going to dance. And not say anything, but it's like, come on, we're going to have a dance morning. And just the little things. And it was November. We were in that marriage counselling session where he describes me as like an animal making sounds a human shouldn't make. I'm like, that's labour, mate. That's not. Mind you, I'm certain I was absolutely silent as I gave birth. Don't remember it. But I remember, in that particular session, like, I got to the point of just desperation. I couldn't do it anymore. I'd said to him that many times, you need to sort yourself out or you've got to get out and I will change the locks. And I think it's healthy for our children to grow up without a dad and to grow up with this in the house. And, you know, he was just convinced he could just keep stretching it along. And that marriage counselling session where I was begging him to go to rehab, I just saw that as the solution. You go to rehab for 28 days and I get my husband back.
Mm-hmm.
And
you obviously still wanted to stay in the marriage. Like, you obviously still at this point wanted him.
I love him. He is a beautiful, good human being who just has faults like we all do. And when I met Anthony, I was just this flighty free bird and he became my anchor. And I needed to be his anchor. Mm-hmm. And I know who he is, and he just needed the chance to see who I saw. Yeah. Because it was bad, but it wasn't bad enough to throw away. He was never violent or abusive. I mean, it is a form of family violence, and I think I was also I was trying to manipulate, I was trying to mother, whatever the Al-Anon 4Ms are, I did all of them. Mm-hmm. There's a playbook. I did not go by the rules. I gave him ultimatums. I did all the wrong things.
Yeah.
All the wrong things. Whatever they say you're meant to do, I just did the total opposite. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, please, it was November. I'm like, please just go to rehab. And he's like, no, I'll go in a few months. And I looked at him and I said, we will not be here in a few months. And I just ended up on the floor in the fetal position, sobbing. And eventually I couldn't even, and the marriage counsellor's here, he's here, and I could feel his eyes on me, and I was like, I have to get away from him. And I walked out into the waiting room. Thank God there was no one else there. And I lay on the floor just having a panic attack, basically. And the therapist eventually came out just to make sure I was okay, and then asked me to come back in. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Like, I'm broken. I have to focus on our children. And
were you worried financially too, Jo? Was there a financial?
Yeah, I mean, there's no stability, and he's so lucky that he didn't lose everything. His staff were calling me worried. Like, he was days away, I reckon. His staff would ring me, and he says that's his rock bottom. Mm. My view of when his rock bottom was one day when one of his staff called me and said he's left here. It was the middle of the day. He's really drunk and we're worried about him. And I don't know how I knew where to find him, but I found him. And he was literally sitting on a bench on the side of the road just bawling. And I managed to convince him to get in the car, and I was trying to drive him home, and he tried to get out of the car while the car was moving. And I had that moment of suddenly I just went, I've got to let this go.
Oh, there it goes.
I have to let it go. And I pulled over and I let him out of the car, and I left him sitting on someone's fence, bawling his eyes out, and drove away. I'm like, I've got to go to my kids. I have to let this go. And I called someone else who I trust, and I said, this is where he is. I can't do this. And just went home. And I left my drunk, paralytic husband on the side of the road and just let it go.
Wow. Incredibly tough. Like, is that the hardest thing you've had to do?
Yeah.
Along with
I know. There are harder things I've had to do. You don't realise how strong you are until you face with it. But and it was leading up to Christmas, and financially things were horrible. And I remember I just want my kids to have a Christmas. And I was driving out to Southland to pick up a little $15 plastic trike from Big W. And on the way home, I was in the car and driving along the Peanut Highway, and I was bawling my eyes out. I had to pull over because I couldn't see. And I pulled over on a slip road where Budget Car Rentals is out in wherever, Hyatt or something, on the Peanut Highway. And it was raining because it's, nearing Christmas in Melbourne. And I was just pulled over on the side of the road and just sobbing hysterically. And there was a tap on the window on the passenger side, and I look over and there was a lady there holding an umbrella, and I wound the window down. She said, "Are you okay?" Oh. And I was just like gasping through my breath. So I was like, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Can I hold your hand?"
Oh, Jo.
And again, another stranger from I don't know where stood. She opened the car door. She didn't sit in the seat, and she stood there and reached over and held my hand as I cried. And then I composed myself, and I remember her name was Carolyn, and she wrote her number down on a scrap of paper in the absolute Bermuda Triangle pit of disgustingness that's my car full of children's stuff. And to this day, I'm like, please someone send me that piece of paper again. I hope it reappears, because she just from nowhere, and she just held my hand. And and that Christmas, he didn't spend Christmas with us. He actually upped and left. He went and stayed above a pub, a friend's pub, and he left the house for a couple of weeks. And it was, the fear. I'm like, is he coming home? Is he going to drink himself to death? And I there was nothing I could do anymore. I just had to leave him to do it. I couldn't control it. And again, really hard to go, I can't control this. And all I could control is looking after my kids and looking after me and staying upright. And by then I fucking hated his guts. I was like, you weak piece of shit. You've chosen to leave your family, sit above a pub, drink every night rather than be with your kids at Christmas. And we didn't spend Christmas together. And that Christmas day was horrible. And my family were brilliant. It was all just about the kids being with their cousins. And I was just torn to pieces. And, two of my sisters and my brother, two of my sisters were probably, I guess, the female thing, but they just,
Yeah.
They just
fuck him.
Gently, people just gently hold you. And
how did they feel towards Anthony, if you're comfortable saying?
I think they're really compassionate and understanding, and they see what I love in him, and they just knew he needed help. And we got through summer, and then he finally agreed to go to Melbourne private. And we took our son to his first day of school. And I remember preparing the house I was like, he's going to be away, and our kids are still really bad sleepers. They need us with them. So I'm like, all right. One day I was like, you're going to help me. We're putting the mattress on the floor so that I can sleep in the bed with the kids and not worry about them falling out and hurting themselves. And so, it was just preparing the house so that I could be there on my own with the kids and manage that. And so we dropped our son to school, dropped the other one to childcare, and I drove him to Melbourne private. And the sense of relief, because I'm like, I know he's not going to die now. Yeah. He's somewhere where he's not going to die, because that's where my head had gone. Yeah. It's like I'd been mentally solo parenting. But I got to the point where I genuinely feared for his life. And I was like, I don't know. It used to be, I don't know who's walking in the door. Then it became, I don't know if he's going to walk in the door. Jeez. And I had 28 days of absolute relief that he was somewhere that they could deal with him now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could just get on with surviving.
Looking after yourself.
Looking after myself.
Melbourne private, was there Did you select that rehab for him, Joe, or did you do it together? Or
I'm a pushy bitch. I did my research. I mean, I whinged and whinged and whinged. Like, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah.
There was a lot of squeaking going on.
It worked.
It worked. But like he said, he only did it to shut me up, not because he intended to even stay. He wasn't planning on staying. He's like, I'll just go for a couple of weeks and shut her up. I thought it was the silver bullet. I'm like, he goes there, he comes home, great, happy days, we're all good. No one tells you anything. No one gives you any support. You know, you're left on your own as the partner.
Could you call him? Like, could you contact him?
So, no, he could call me. So the first week there was no contact. And in the second week, they would get there 5 minutes, between 5 and 7 or something. Who's got young children? What's the worst time of day to call someone with young children?
Actually, it was 5 o'clock, wasn't it?
The worst time of day.
The worst.
And he would call, and in the end, I was like, don't bother calling. It's just too hard. It's too hard. I mean, witching hour, come on. And that was their rules, did not suit our life.
Pop that in the suggestion box next time.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, middle of the day, whatever. And then there was a day where I went in to take him some different shirts, because I remember when he was packing to go, you know, they tell you what you can take, and you can't take anything that has alcohol branding on it.
Oh, no bing tang.
Half the T-shirts Anthony wears are freebies from beer companies. And so I went and bought a whole lot of plain stuff. And then after a week in there, he's like, I want my colourful shirts.
Yes.
You know,
brand.
Watermelon shirts and all those crazy prints. And so I went to take them in, and the therapist, I don't even know who it was, psychiatrist, psychologist who was working with, actually came in and took me into a room. We sat and had a chat, and then he actually brought Anthony out to see me, which was really emotional, because I remember just holding him so hard. Just because he was there, and I was like, you're safe. And there was this hope that he was going back to, or finding that person again. And, you know, you fall into someone and you feel safe with them, and I hadn't felt safe with him for so long, and just holding him, and he was still so weak and broken and vulnerable, but just that moment of standing together, and just there was just so much hope in that hug that I might get him back. And I still, I was totally blind. I had no idea. Then it turned into week 3, and I was like, he comes home in a week, and what am I meant to do? Like, do I have to empty the house of alcohol? And I remember going around and putting everything in boxes and sending the stuff that I knew I didn't care if I got drunk. I sent to one house, and, you know, we had the most amazing collection of wine from all around the world, like from my travels and his travels. It's all in a box at my best friend's house. And it hasn't come back into the house. And it can now, but reminds me I've got to go around and pick it up. But it's been safe for 2 years. It's fine. The kids haven't found it yet. But there was no preparation for me. And I do remember I did have a conversation with him when he was in there, and I said that it was fucking hard. Like those 4 weeks were really hard. I was exhausted. But I said to him, there's a real danger for you now, because I know I can do this by myself, because I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to, but I can. And that was all about, you know, the boys and parenting. So it's like, again, it's the ultimatum, but it's like, I will do this by myself if you don't sort yourself out. And it was that realisation in me that I could do it. And I have the most incredible respect for solo parents. I did it for a little bit. It's hard. It's really hard. There is no one, you know, there's no tag teaming. There's none of that stuff. You're on your own with these kids. But I was like, I can do this. And I let him know that. I made sure he knew that. And then I think in the 4th week, they have like a family night. And you go, and other family members, partners of people who are in there, and it's just like a help group. And sitting directly opposite me was a woman who was probably about 10, 15 years older than me, and she had 2 sons with her. And I feel like the universe put her in front of me, because I heard her sons, the person who was in there, I heard his sons talk about how their relationship with their father was non-existent and they had no respect for him. You know, these were boys who were in their, late teens, early 20s. And they were recounting stories about how their dad would drink and do coke with their friends. And it wasn't like, hey, you're a cool dad. They thought he was an absolute dickhead. And they didn't really want anything to do with him. And I'm like, this could have been my life.
Yeah.
It's sitting there right in front of me. They were seated directly opposite me in this circle, this woman and her 2 boys. And I was like, this could have been us. And but that was the only real support they give you. They don't they're not there for us. They're there for them. And I guess it was up to us to seek our own support. Al-Anon didn't work for me. I was also pretty time poor. I still am. And, you know, I just had these really great friends who were very close to me. And it was really interesting once he was at Melbourne Private. A couple of people who were really close to me came around, and because I was just doing that, oh, my God, I can't believe it. My husband's an addict. He's in rehab, blah, blah, blah. And the guy, he's like, I don't drink. And I was like, what? I've never even noticed. He's like, no, I don't drink. I used to have a problem with alcohol. I don't drink. And I was like, but what about, we've been at so many functions together and parties and barbecues and kids' things, and I've never even noticed. He said, no one pays any attention.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. And I'm talking 15 years of stuff with this couple. Not once had I noticed that he didn't drink.
Wow.
Because he said, you know what? No one pays attention. It doesn't matter. Because I'm thinking we can't socialise. We're going to be pariahs. No one's going to invite us to anything. And she's like, and she was amazing. She's like, you get through it. It'll be okay and things will be better. And I couldn't believe her. I'm like, it can't get better. Full victim mentality. It's never going to be better. No one knows how hard this is but me. And now I'm like, yeah, they were right. They were right. Yeah. And he came home and I'm like, yay, now we get back to normal. Oh, no, because he was an outpatient for months. He went in every day. And the day he came home, I dropped our son to school. I dropped the youngest. I walked him to childcare. And I walked out of childcare and I almost collapsed on the footpath because I'd got through that week. And then the next thing I had to do was go and pick Anthony up and he'd come home and everything would be okay. And I was just like, ugh. And I remember almost crawling home, just get home, get in the car, get to Melbourne Private, get him home. Everything will be okay.
What was it like
and I was,
that first night?
It was weird. It was really weird. I mean, the kids were such a great distraction. And I was still so angry at him, so angry, so resentful. And then, you know, I was like, I was punishing him. I'd be like, you can get the kids up. I'm staying in bed.
Yeah.
Like, see, that is what I would be doing. Like, because I'm like, sorry, I've just done all this. No, so your turn. And I did that for far too long. I was a bitch. But he took it all. He took all my anger. He took all my resentment. And he's like, I You know?
So was he trying to keep the peace then, like instead of blowing?
Yeah, I mean, he's a real peacemaker. You know,
Okay.
Anthony, he's like, everyone loves him.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had this idea that he would come home and everything would be back to normal, and it was a really rude shock that it wasn't. He was going to AA meetings 7 days a week. He was going to Melbourne Private for 3 or 4 hours a day. So I'm like, you're not here. You're still not here. He needed to, though. But then I really hated AA. I'm like, you've just exchanged one addiction for another.
Huh.
You know, like you may not be drinking alcohol. You've joined a cult now.
Yeah, right.
And really hated it.
That because he wasn't there for you, like you resented.
Yeah, and he was just so, there's this elation that comes once you pass through that. And he was high on that. And I was like, do I have to listen to this shit again? Really? I mean, he was just, oh, my God. And then he, you know, he had his big book and all that stuff. I'm like,
enough already.
Enough already. But you know what? Like, it's leveled out. It was very extreme and it needed to be that intense for him. And he's kind of like the model alcoholic in recovery. He really is. He should not have his family still. He's like, seriously, he was days away from losing everything. He's a lucky fucker. And
I feel like
sorry, I'm swearing so much.
No, we love it.
No,
I feel like after speaking to Anthony, he knows that. Like he knows that you, Joe, were absolute dynamite in his recovery. Well, in him, you know.
I was a bitch.
That's what he needed.
Yeah, but I think I didn't. Anyone listening, don't do what I did. Apparently, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
Apparently,
there's no right way and wrong way.
That's right. And I think, yeah, there is no right way. And you know, now he still goes to meetings, not as many. They're family friendly times. Eventually, I just went, dude, this does not work. Like, you are going to meetings between 5 and 8 p.m.
Oh, shit.
Or on a weekend in the morning. This is not working out for me. And so, but I had to point it out before he'd go, oh, okay, I'll go to another one. I'm like, duh. Who do you think's back here looking after the kids? But, you know, he's good. He takes on feedback.
Yeah, he's like the A grade, A+ student, isn't he? He's just
totally.
the pin-up boy for it.
But he, you know what? He wanted, I know he says he did it to shut me up, but he really wanted to not be that version of himself.
There was something deep in him.
I know him.
Yeah.
And I know the good Anthony, and all he needed was the chance to find that person again. And it was really hard to get that little crack in the door so that he could push it open and walk through.
Kudos to both of you, Joe. Like, you know, Andy from Etch speaks about Jason's addiction, and probably the key word there was compassion. And I know, like, I was actually talking to Anthony yesterday, and we were sort of comparing notes about try to lead people through or help people with addiction. Actually, I heard on Cooper Chapman's podcast this morning, he's a guy talking about addiction. You can't make anyone do it. They want to help themselves.
Like anything in life, yeah.
Correct. And it's just incredible that both of you were able to do that, and he wanted to walk through that door and see it all now. So, so what's life like for you guys now? Like,
life's really good. I mean, I really genuinely didn't believe that it ever could be good. And, you know, I sat in this full victim woe is me thing for ages as well, and it's good. You know, our house is a really happy place, and he's an incredibly present father. and so engaged with the boys and committed to the boys. And I mean, both of us, that's our priority, is our children. And everything, if they're okay, everything else in life is okay. I was actually talking to a school mum about that this morning. It's like, as long as your kid's okay, everything's okay. It's like everything else balances out. And you know, we're edging our way back into socialising together. Like, we're a very social couple. Obviously, COVID stopped that, but and we've been in the fox's den of the pit of young children, where you just kind of vanish from the planet for a while. And I feel like we're coming out of that now. And I'm one of those people who talks about stuff. You know, I've had multiple miscarriages. I talk about it because I think women are doing themselves a disservice by not. And my husband is an alcoholic. It doesn't make him a bad person. He's just got an illness.
Yeah.
And how he chooses to treat that is by staying sober as opposed to feeding the addiction. And you know, you can destigmatize a lot of things. And I think he had this real fear about how he would be viewed as well, you know, being in the community and being a parent and all of those things. And, you know, that person who said to me, I don't drink and I'd never noticed for 15 years, is true. Like, you can still be out in the world and function without having a beer in your hand. Yeah. And I barely drink at all now. Partly because I've got young kids, but I think that's what happens after you have children. You can have 2 glasses of wine and you're like, oh, I'm done. And we don't really have booze in the house, but I mean, we could. I remember thinking when I cleared everything out, I'm like, I can't believe I can't even have a bottle of wine in the fridge because of you. And now I'm like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's a lot. And like I said at the beginning, when he did come out from that dark cloud with his eyes blinking in the headlights, like in complete shock, you know, his eyes have adjusted to the light and the sun's shining, and you know, things can be better for everyone. And just because it was bad then doesn't mean it's going to be bad again. I lived in absolute fear and terror every day that he would pick up a drink again. And I couldn't trust that he wouldn't. And so, like, there was just this underlying anxiety all the time. It's like, how do I know that he's not going to go back to that? Yeah. And in April last year, one of my closest friends' husbands died really unexpectedly, and she lives in New South Wales. And I went up to be with her, and I left Anthony with the kids, and it's the first time I've done that since I don't know when. And he called me. I'd landed in Sydney and I was driving to her place an hour and a half outside of Sydney, and we were on the phone to each other, and he said, thank you for trusting me. And it was a really big moment. Like, I had to be there for my friend, and it was only because Anthony was well that I could do that. And the fact that he was able to articulate that too, like, it was a turning point for us, I think, that had probably gone unspoken until that drive where I'm sitting in the car. And it's like, I can trust him now.
That's huge. Yeah.
And I can trust him with the most important people in our lives. I can leave him with them, and they're going to be okay, and he's responsible now. And I could go and do what I had to do, and have that space and that time with my friend. So, you know, that's almost a year ago now, and that was a big turning point for us, I think.
That's massive. What about biggest lessons you've learned out of this, out of being that support person and seeing, you know, the most important person in your life? in that
that
position.
there comes a time where you have to let go.
Love this. I love this,
Yeah,
Joe.
loving the let go. Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Elsa, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Let it go.
And I have that song go through my head so many times, sometimes about things, it's just like, let it go. Because,
Yeah.
you know, they have to want to do it. And everyone would say that to me, you know, you can't, this addiction doctor, Malvern Private. I'd drive to Coles, I'd sit in the car park and cry and call Malvern Private, trying to work out how to get him in there. And they're like, he has to do it himself. And I eventually had to let go and let him do what he was going to do. Like, he had all the support in the world, he had all the love in the world, and he had to work it out himself. And even though he went to rehab, he walked in the door to shut me up because I was a whingy motherfucker. And I nagged him and nagged him. And it was only once he was there that shift came.
He was open to it.
And he was open to it. But,
Yeah.
you know, and I see people that, you know, are on that path to recovery and they stumble, but they keep trying. And I think that's the most important thing too, not giving up. And I didn't give up on him, but I also didn't give up on myself. There had to come a time where I had to, my children, I was all they had. And if I wasn't okay, they weren't going to be okay. And looking after myself was looking after them, because I couldn't look after him anymore, because I was doing the mothering and the martyrdom and all of the thing, whatever the 4Ms are. You know, I did it all and it didn't work. And I became the policewoman, getting him to do a breatho when he got home. Who wants to be that person? I didn't want to be that person. And if he wanted to be the person whose wife had to breathalyse him, that had to be his problem, not mine. And it does get better if it's worth it.
Yeah.
And only you know whether it's worth it. Like, if you're in a situation of domestic violence, get the fuck out. We weren't. But you've got to look after yourself first. And people come from the most unexpected places to help you as well. This woman on the side of the road with her umbrella holding my hand, a woman I'd met at sleep school who's still in my life. And you know, these hands that would reach from across the world just to support me, and from the next suburb and interstate. Like, there are people there, even if you think there's no one, there's always someone. And you would be surprised the number of people who are either living with addiction or living as the partner of someone with an addiction. And we all hide it because it's shameful. And I think it's not shameful. So
we had so much overwhelmingly positive feedback on Anthony's episode, didn't we, May? So, like, throughout that week his episode aired, I had so many blokes come up to me in Bendigo saying that chat was unreal. Like, you know, he's done an amazing job to get off it. Like, yeah, it was so, people were so positive about Anthony sharing his story.
Yeah. And and that's, again, what I said to him at the beginning was, when you are able to, you're going to help so many people. He's one of his oldest friends in the world. When everything was collapsing, he was incredible. He would call me to check in all the time. He knew what was going on. He's probably one of Anthony's few friends who really knew what was going on. He would call me all the time to check in. He would just pop in.
Yeah.
Like 3 hours out of his way. And yeah, there were people who just, there's always someone there, even if you think there's not. And sometimes it's just a matter of letting someone know that you're really having a fucking horrible time.
Yeah. Being
And
vulnerable.
and you're open to that too, Joe. Like, and I feel like that always happens when you're at your deepest, darkest like you said, the most unexpected friendships are formed out of that. But you've been open to that too. And you coming on the pod, opening up that conversation about support, because I'm sure you felt invisible through all of this, didn't you? Like, so what then is your advice for listeners? What are the telltale signs of an addiction? What to look out for? Who to reach to?
It's the lying and whenever someone starts hiding things from you, you don't hide things from people you love. If you're doing the right thing in life by yourself and by everyone else, you don't hide it.
Yeah.
And I'm a very instinctive, trust my vibes kind of person, and my gut had been saying for so long that something wasn't right, and because there were so many other things making noise in my life, I just was like, I'm not going to listen to that. And you don't listen to it until it is screamingly hurtling towards you, and you're like, if I don't do something about this, this Mack truck's going to hit me and squash me. And
that's a really important point, actually, Joe. Listen to your gut. I don't think enough of us
always listen to your gut. Like, don't get paranoid, but your instincts are usually right. And for it to get to the point where his staff were calling me because of him just being drunk at work and stuff, like, that's not good. He didn't want to hear it. He just thought everyone was a dickhead and
not his problem.
Yeah, it's them.
No one likes to hear the truth when it's ugly.
That hurts. Yeah.
But he's back.
Yeah, and he's owning his truth. Yeah. He's
and
definitely.
I think now it's about just in life there's always going to be bad things that happen, but you can choose to either tune into the bad stuff that's going to make you anxious and jumpy, or just find the good things and lean into the good things. And that's what we're doing now as a family, is just leaning into the good stuff, because we've got a second chance.
And you're using what you've experienced to help others, and that sharing that vulnerability.
I felt so alone, and someone put me onto someone who lived near us and had young children whose partner was in recovery. And I remember talking to them on the phone, and because I just thought, no one knows what I'm going through. Nobody's been through this. No one knows. And then to be able to know that there's other people who are living or have lived what you're going through, and they've got through to the other side and things are better and life is good, that's what you need. You need to be able to cling on to some hope, because if you're like, oh, fuck, everyone hits rock bottom and they lose their marriage, they lose their job, they lose it all. And it's like, you don't want to, that is a reality and that happens, but it also doesn't happen. And so to know that that's not always going to be the story, I think is important. And I didn't want that to be my story. I didn't want it to be my kids' story. And at the moment it's not, which is great.
Oh, so good.
So good, Joe. Look at you guys go. You held it together. You stuck in there. All for the
held on by my eyelashes, they say.
Oh, Joe. Thank God you got us a few tears in all of that.
Oh, no, I got a few tears too.
You got us. You got us. So we're going to tell us more. Like, is there anything you want to add before we?
No, I was just going to say thank you for having me. And, if anyone's going through a rough time or just needs to talk to someone, reach out. Like, you're not alone, and I genuinely felt alone. Do you know the other really beautiful thing too, since Anthony has been open with his story, is how many people reach out to both of us.
Yes.
And, we had some friends who they're both in recovery at the moment, and there was I can't remember what it was, but some summary thing where people usually get together, and they were doing what we did, which was isolate themselves because they're like, we can't socialise. And I said, come to our house. Our house is a safe space. There'll be no alcohol. The kids can jump on the trampoline. It's absolute chaos. There's animals everywhere. It's basically a disaster, but come here and you can be around other people and it's okay, and you don't need to drink, and there won't be any alcohol around you, because in those early stages of recovery, it can't be. And it was really interesting because he wasn't going to come. He was so scared. And then it was so beautiful to watch him. He came on it. I said he should come on his own. And if he needs to leave, tell him he can go on his own, so you're not all stuck with all the kids and the whole thing. And just to watch them both relax a bit more and a bit more and a bit more.
Oh.
It was, you can still have a life and you can still participate in the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Just because you don't drink doesn't mean you have to hide.
Yeah.
So, Australian drinking culture has to change, I remember saying to people when I was deep in advertising, I don't trust anyone who doesn't drink.
Oh, shit, yeah. We've all said it.
Yeah.
We've all said it. And now I'm like, I think professionally someone who doesn't drink is probably more reliable during the day.
But it's hard to remember a time when we didn't socialise without booze. Like from the moment we're 16 or, 15, 16, whenever we socialise, there's booze around. So it's almost
That's
like
right.
a skill you have to learn.
See, and this is another thing I actually wanted to say. My father doesn't drink. Having had a few things told to me by my uncle, I think he's probably an alcoholic, but I'm in my mid-40s, I've never seen him pick up a drink. My mother had 5 children. She was a very busy lady. She would possibly have a glass of wine once a fortnight. I wasn't raised in an environment where alcohol was present.
Yeah.
Anthony grew up in pubs. And I have said this to him so many times. He disagrees with me, but I'm like, you weren't set up in life to have a healthy relationship with alcohol. You were raised around alcohol. And I'm sure there are people who grew up in pubs and went the other way, but, he's got the highest emotional EQ of anyone I know. And I know it stems from the age of whatever, 1. He's watched people. Yeah. If you want to know anything about anyone, ask Anthony to have a coffee with them. He's got it pegged in 5 minutes.
Huh.
It's his superpower. It's unbelievable. But he was also raised in an environment where people just drank. And, country, sport, it all goes hand in hand. And so he had a very different introduction to alcohol.
He was up against it, wasn't he?
Yeah. So... And now he's a sober publican, which is...
I know.
And it was really hard for him. His identity was tied up with alcohol, and I know he was terrified of who he was without it, and he's actually a better person without it.
Oh, he's dynamite.
Yeah.
I've said it before on the podcast, and Noddy and I thought each other were fuckwits. Do you know what I mean? And now, we share gratitude journals every day, catch up for coffees. He's just he's a beautiful human being, and even better because and you saw that in him, Joe.
And that's the thing. I just knew that he needed the opportunity to find his way to the person I know he is.
Yeah.
And, he's my anchor. He just grounds me to this life, and he just needed me to hold on to him tightly so that he didn't just break away and get blown away by it all.
Yeah. Oh,
that's what partnership is, really.
Yin and yang.
Yin and yang. That's right.
That's wonderful. Well, Joe, thank you so much for that. We're going to jump into a little bit of rapid fire and recommendation because we want to hear about you as well.
Oh, me.
A bit about the tough times that you've been through, and we just so appreciate that as well. But let's talk about Joe. Rapid fire. Oh, yes.
This is a bit of fun.
Okay.
Joe. This is a bit of
fun. Just a bit of a light-hearted. So is Donald Trump the sleaze bag? Was it an open hand bum grab, or did he give you a pinchy pinch on the bum?
Oh, no, he grabbed my boob.
Oh, it was boob. I thought
Even
boob.
better. Even better.
Right,
Tell
Dab.
us.
Yes, for
Who
real. Donald
Donald Trump.
Trump grabbed my boob.
Was it a right?
So it was, there's an article I wrote for Mamma Mia about this that kind of describes the whole thing. But we filmed with him on the top of Trump Tower, and at the very end of the shoot, the director, Bennett Miller, he's like, oh, we have to, and it was the height of The Apprentice where it's all, you're fired. And Bennett's like, oh, I need to have our photos taken. So I take Bennett's photo with Donald, and they're both doing the you're fired thing. And then as they're winding up, and Donald, Mr. Orange, is wandering off, Bennett goes, hang on a minute, you need your photo with the producer. And he stops and he turns and he's like, the producer. And he comes back and he puts his hand around my waist. And if you look at the photo that goes with the article, you can see it. And he just goes boop, and down again. It was like a twitch. And I just remember kind of looking around, and Dave Araki, the grip's there, and, you know, the art director was there. And I'm like, did anyone else see that? And then I was like, maybe that didn't happen. I'm like, yeah, he grabbed my boob. And the funny thing is, I've got no boobs. It's like, what were you looking for? There was nothing to grab. And I sat on that for years because I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I remember telling the story to Dave Hughes at one of Kate's parties, and he's like, you've got to come on the radio show. You've got to come. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be that person who, when my name gets typed into Google, I will who Donald Trump. That's not, you know, my life story. And then during that last election when he was running, I was like, this guy is a scumbag. This guy is a scumbag.
Yeah.
And so I just did a little piece for Mamma Mia, but it got buried, I think, in the election. There were other distractions because I think there's like 27 women, including me, who've gone on the record. I'm the only one, I shouldn't say this, I'm the only one who hasn't had a phone call from a lawyer. So,
look out, it might be coming at you now, baby.
there's some chick down in Australia. Yeah.
Wow. That's huge, Joe.
Yeah, I lived in New York for 4 years, so I did some fun stuff. I'm not saying that was fun, but yeah.
Yeah, I bet. You've got some wild stories. So you're talking about Aussies. Kylie Minogue, you worked with Kylie Minogue and U2. The question I have for you is, did you ever see Edge without his beanie? And can Kylie Minogue, so tiny, can she fit in your pocket? Does she go up to your hips? Because you're so tall.
I was actually, she's tiny. She's like a little bird. I was standing and we were relighting when she did Rod Laver Arena. I mean, this is a long time ago, and she was flying on the crescent moon. They had this crescent moon that would go all over. It's still the sequin thing, and it was on cables over Rod Laver. And it was being filmed for TV as well as for live, and so the lighting needed to be different so that it would pick up for TV. And so before the show that day when we were filming, they were just tweaking lights, and was decided because my hair colour was similar to hers, it's just you could be the stand-in while we reset the lights. And so I was standing on the stage and I just had to move to her marks, and I was like, this is hilarious. I'm 6 feet tall. And so I'm standing on the stage just walking through it, and then Kylie turned up to do her sound check and she kind of toddled over next to me, and I was just going, hello, I'm you. I'll let you have your stage now. They're so lovely. The Minogue family is so beautiful. It was lovely. Nice people.
That.
And Edge without his beanie, I don't think so. I saw Bono without his glasses.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think he wears them for vanity. I'm not sure. I mean, that was funny. That was hilarious. There were like sniffer dogs coming onto set and stuff. The security was crazy. But yeah, they were both very different gigs.
Yeah,
those touring bands, they all just become family. I did some work with the Foo Fighters too, and they're just delightful.
Well, that was actually my next question, actually. So Breezer saw them in Geelong just last year, wasn't it? And then I saw them twice, once in Birmingham, and then I just don't remember the other time. Tell us, Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. Tell us something about them that wows you and wow us.
So Dave Grohl made me drink so much Jaeger that when I left, so I went on the road with them for 2 weeks filming for, I was producing a music video for them. And then the tour finished in New Zealand, and I had a really early flight the next morning. So I was like, I'm not staying in the same hotel. I'm booking an airport hotel so I can literally walk. That hotel at Auckland, you just walk over the road and you go in. Because I had to come back onto set here in Australia for an ad shoot. Anyway, I ended up staying up all night drinking Jaeger with Dave Grohl and Jack Black, because Tenacious D were the support. And I cannot to this day smell Jaeger.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Dave Grohl ruined it for you. Not a bad claim to fame.
But they're delightful. You know, he is genuinely the nicest guy in rock and roll. His reputation he's lovely.
He is who he says he is. I'm actually reading his book at the moment. And the last question, quick one, Cannes Film Festival, there's a photo of you and Kanye. Is he smiling in that photo?
It's hilarious. Where'd you find that one? Okay, so that's actually the Cannes Advertising Festival. I used to go to that every year, and he was there for something, because they roll out these celebrities that have nothing to do with advertising to do talks. And he was at the Carlton Terrace, which is where everyone drinks, had his security all around him, and everyone's going, oh, my God, that's Kanye, that's Kanye, that's Kanye. And so I just walked up to him and I handed my phone to his bodyguard and I was like, can you take a photo? And he did. Yeah. And everyone watched it and they're like, only you could get away with that. Like security would usually go away. And you've got his security guard taking a
tall blonde selfie. Comes up. Yeah, say no to that.
But that's seriously, I'd totally forgotten about that.
That's so good. Oh, and Jo, thank you for that. A little bit of fun, because you are a powerhouse. And
it's funny. It feels like a lifetime ago. I've kind of left all that behind. I'm writing a book now. So
you're writing a book?
Sorry, just glossed over that. You're writing a book.
I'm writing a book, yes. I'm writing a book. I've almost finished it. It's fiction.
Tell us.
It's inspired by my experience with my mum's dementia. But it's turned out to be a bit of a domestic noir thriller.
Wow, so clever. Can you say it's called and when it's coming out? Well,
no, because I haven't finished it yet. So give me 6 months and I'll tell you.
Okay, huge. We'll get on the pre-sale. We'll pump it up on here.
Yeah.
How good.
That's
incredible,
massive.
Jo. And just to wrap it up at the end, recommendation of the week. So anything that's brought you joy, sparked joy, that you can recommend for our listeners.
It's time for the recommendation of the week.
Getting outside and spending time with animals is my recommendation of the week.
Oh, I love that.
We have a lot of pets, and it's a very conscious decision, because when we had our first son, and Anthony's tall, his whole family are tall, and I realised that I needed to put gentle men into the world. That was my job, was to make sure that the men that I put in the world were gentle. And I was raised with a lot of pets, and I think that learning to love animals and have compassion, once that is an innate part of you, that's your default. And so we have 2 rabbits, we have chickens, we have dogs, we have cat, we have turtle, we have lizard. We've got lots of pets. And I'm looking at our rabbits now. They live in the front yard, and we've got a picket fence, and everyone walks past and everyone stops to chat. And I've got a little bench seat, and sometimes I just sit out there and watch them, and I like chatting to people. And just that those simple things bring joy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I really felt that. I was walking down the beach the other day, and there was this brown Doberman, and I was feeling a bit glum, and just this brown Doberman, having a little pat with it and watching it so happy, it just instantly changed my mood.
It does.
Mood changes, aren't they? They're beautiful.
They are mood changes. And, I've always trusted dogs that, I lost my dog, Otto, last year after 16 years. And a lot of people didn't realise this, but when I would interview people to come and work at my production company, I'd always make sure he was in the meeting.
Oh, yes.
And the company's called Otto. I named it after him.
I did see that. I thought that's part of your email.
He would be in the meeting, and people didn't realise he was part of the interview process.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
What sort of dog was Otto?
Clever.
A mini poodle. I've still got another mini poodle who's asleep down there, and then you might have heard the Groodle, Bobby.
Yeah, I did.
Bobby's hilarious. But yeah,
I got home from Melbourne last night at like 1:30, back to Bendigo in the morning. I came home to an empty house, and there's my dog at the window just waiting, Chili, just wagging her tail, waiting for me. I'm like, oh, Chili.
It's unconditional. They're amazing creatures. They really are.
Yeah, they are. Actually,
Yeah,
my dad. Yeah. Oh, Joe.
What were you going to say? What were you going to say?
I was about to say a story about my dad and his dog, how close they were, and Dad used to back the trailer up to the back of the veranda because Jack lost his jump off his back leg, so he'd back the ute up so he could walk on the back of the ute. Yeah, and I've been on Dad for years to get a new dog, and he said, "No, I'm not getting another dog." You heard a thing on the radio a little while ago that if you give your heart to a dog, they'll rip it out. Dad's heartbroken. That's how close the animals are. Just follow. And they're very special.
I didn't realise how much the wind would be knocked out of my sails when I lost Otto. Like, he was a dog that put me back together after I moved back from New York, and I'd had a really horrible breakup and I was broken. And this little dog appeared and I had to look after him, so I had to think about something else. And he just, I love all my pets, but there was something really special about him, and it really knocked the wind out of my sails. And I remember going into an edit for something after, probably 2 weeks after he died, and the editor, this beautiful guy, Marty, he stepped out from behind his editing desk and just walked up to me and just put his arms around me because he's a dog person, and he just knew, and I just fell apart. It was like just hugging me, and I just fell apart. And it's like he understood, the huge loss, and I had bunches of flowers arriving at the house. It was a huge loss, and we said we won't get another dog, we'll wait. And then next minute, a friend of Anthony's in Bendigo had a litter of Groodles, and I was like, let's just drive out and have a look.
You never just
won't get one. Yeah.
Anyway, now we've got Bobby, and Bobby's the best. But
I love this. So
get out and just, even if you don't have a pet, go to a park and look at a duck, or I don't know,
go to the dog park.
Watch animals. Just watch animals. They have got, they've got it right.
They do. They do really get it. I love that. Oh, Jojo Defina, we have absolutely adored this chat with you today. Your vulnerability, your openness, you took us on a journey, that is for sure. There was tears, emotion, the whole things. And as we've said, and we continue to shout at you're being so generous with your time, and your openness will help so many, undoubtedly. The ripple effect this will travel far. That we won't
Thanks
know.
for having me, ladies.
Thank you for reaching out. It's honestly. Thanks for trusting us.
It was interesting hearing. There was nothing Anthony spoke about that either I hadn't lived or we hadn't spoken about together. But there were a few moments where I was like, this is bringing back one of the worst times in my life.
It would have been pretty triggering. And I think it's just so important for you to have that airtime too. I hope that this is going to be part of your healing.
Yeah, it is. Really interesting, actually. I know Anthony was talking about the making amends. I haven't been ready for him to make amends with me. And even when you suggested today, I was going to put it off because I'm good at going, I'll do that. And then I was like, you know what? No, enough. It's time to move on and live.
Yeah. Well, I hope this is going to be a little bit of healing for your heart for each other.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a power couple, and we can't wait to share more of our lives together as we work through this alcohol-free journey. And, we're always here for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jo.
It's been good to be here.
Cheers.
See you. Bye.
This podcast is proudly produced by our audio engineer, music extraordinaire, Eric Labb.
We love you, Eric.